know you were a cancer survivor, man. Congrats on that.
I am, yeah. It's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was quite interesting and life-altering, and lessons and humility, and so thank you. Appreciate that, buddy.
That's a big deal, man. Congrats.
It is. You know what's interesting about it? I was talking to Jared Sirocco about it. He was on the pod, and he was talking about how when his dad was sick, just how he reacted. And then I was thinking, oh wow, that really brings me back. Like, how do you react in tough times when your kids are watching? So it reminded me of what my wife and I were talking about when I was going through it, and she was there right next to me, obviously supporting, and what my sons and daughter, my youngest was a little baby, so he doesn't remember. But yeah, super interesting. But yeah, dude. So yeah, thanks for your time. It's been really neat to have exchanged messages for almost a year. And
Yeah,
that's my
sorry
bad.
about that.
No,
We've
that's
both
me.
been busy, man. We've both been busy.
No, I love that you were at Ursa. I love that you spoke, and love that's Northwest connection.
Yeah.
Northwest is home. But where, I'm just curious, where, for everyone, like, where are your locations? I know you're in the Northwest. Where are you located at? Where are they?
Yeah, so home's in Salem, Oregon, and that's actually home to 3 of our locations and our corporate office. So our newest location on Lancaster Drive, our first location in downtown Salem, and then our first big box in South Salem. And then we also have locations in Albany and in Kaiser, and hopefully some more on the way. We'll see.
There you go. Making moves, man.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, you're doing the work, putting your nose down, right?
Right.
You're planning, all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So is it just you? Do you have a group of partners?
Yeah, so I own 2 of the 5 100% myself, and then I brought my dad and one of my best friends in 2017, and so they're owners with me in 3 of the other ones. So when we started the whole business, it was about making change in community and being able to change the lives of those that we serve, but also be able to change the lives of our friends and our family members by hopefully be able to provide a good place to work for them.
Yeah. How does that not become cliche, right? We've been in the
Yeah.
game long enough that it becomes part of the mission statement,
Right.
right? To impact the lives and the communities that we serve.
Right.
You know, I was a Gold's Gym guy for a lot of years, and that was one of the lines in there. And I think anyone that's heard that and had to memorize it, we've incorporated it in other things we've done.
Right.
But what do you do to not make that cliche?
I think it's about being more than just like service, right? I think that for most people, they come to the gym and they want good service, but to me, service is what you do when you customer service someone that came in and had a bad experience, right? So for me, it's all about having a good experience and having good hospitality. Hospitality is beyond service, right? And so I think that's where it starts. Like, change doesn't start when you come in and you look at the physical aspect of someone changing their life. It starts when you made them feel welcome in your facility, welcome and safe. So it starts the second they walk in the front door and how they're greeted. And I think it's all about the way we make someone feel. And so in our industry, the cliche part really is change your life has been let's make you more physically fit. But for us, and now most of the world post-COVID, it has always been about changing the way people feel about fitness. It's always been a physical, mental, and social thing. It's always been about coming in and feeling as if kind of that Cheers mentality, right? Like, we're both old enough to remember Cheers back in the day. And it's like where everyone knows your name. And we used to, even during our interview process, we would introduce our interviewees to 3 or 4 members during like the initial walk around the club. And during then the interview, we'd ask them those people's name. And if they didn't remember them, we wouldn't offer them the job, because it was that important to us to, 1, remember people's name, 2, greet people and make them feel as if they are welcome from the second they walk in the door. So you're right. Like, it's kind of cliche, but I think for us, it's more about like changing the way that people perceive fitness and the way that they come in and they just feel at home. It's their third place.
Yeah. And I have a lot of respect for your first initial reaction, because I think the same way. It's, what do you do when things aren't rosy?
Right.
How do you react? I'm a baseball coach for my son's select baseball team. And for anyone that watches sports, a lot of times we become very critical of athletes, regardless of what level, when they don't handle adversity very well. And obviously it changes, different age and maturity level, get all that. But within business, isn't it true that when adversity strikes, when someone's not happy, how do you respond when things aren't going well?
Right.
And I love that you led off with that. It's when someone's not happy, how are you going to right the ship or just do your best and be respectful and be kind? And to me, that is one of the main layers of not making it cliche. And I'm
Right.
curious for your team, your company, how do you look or how do you train at addressing those types of moments that aren't rosy and happy? How do you prepare your team for that?
Right. So I mean that's a hard question, and it's something that we're working on and we're adapting every day. So like you, I'm a coach, right? So I coach eighth grade flag football. I coach 8-year-old flag football, 8-year-old basketball. My son's teams. I love it, and he loves that I coach because I tell it how it is. There's not the like sugarcoat it. Hey, you did a good job regardless, and sometimes like that's frowned upon, especially nowadays. But I'm not a participation trophy type of person. I'm a, hey, failure creates success because we have to learn from our failures. And so for me, when we're training our team, we are really big about building first and foremost the fundamentals, right? And so it's all about the fundamentals and it's brick by brick on that. So what can we do to ensure that they have the fundamentals down? And that fundamental could be anything, right? So if it's a front desk team, it's making sure that they understand we're greeting someone within 4 seconds of walking through the door. And it's how we're greeting them, regardless of what we're doing. If we're on the phone with an angry customer, or we're helping another customer sign up for a membership, or we're talking to a longtime customer, how do we make the customer that's coming through the door feel good? And how do we drill that in just training? So it's training all those scenarios. And then it goes down to whether it's cleaning or whatever it may be. So first it's mastering the fundamentals. And we do that by and then that becomes the foundation to our success, right? So without the fundamentals, there is no foundation. Without the foundation, there is no long-term success. And so it's by mastering fundamentals and creating a foundation that then allows us to weather the adversity, right? And so that becomes what in my coaching philosophy that I talk about the process. So how do we enjoy both the ups and downs of the process? Because that's where we really become successful in whatever we're doing in life. And so with our teams, we tell them from the very beginning, we're not here to make you successful at physique. We're here to make you successful in life. And the things that we're going to train you on, that we're going to teach you on, and the skills we're going to teach you aren't so much about becoming the best front desk person or the best trainer. You will be that as well. But it's about taking these skills and using them then in other areas of your life. So if I can teach you to master fundamentals, whatever they may be, to make them a foundation and then enjoy the process of the ups and the downs, then you're going to be successful. Because it's only then that in anything you do, whether it's sports or whatever it is, like my son, like if he misses a catch, I pull him off. I said, hey, you're supposed to catch it this way. And if you go out and you miss again, I'm going to pull you off the field until you remember how to catch the ball. Right. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And he goes out and he catches it the right way. He learned from that. And then that weakness eventually becomes a strength. And then that becomes something that becomes more fun. And as we master the fundamentals and and becomes a foundation and we enjoy the process, now life is fun. Work is fun. And when it's fun, it's not a job. And so that's one of the things that we really focus on in every aspect of physique.
And is looking at those fundamentals, how much of that is standardized in an SOP when they're onboarded, where you're looking at 4 minutes? Because a lot of people are still doing it off the hip, and they're very good at it, almost like
Right.
Jay-Z writing a new rap song. He does it all off the top of his head.
Right.
Looking at the quality of the product that you're trying to put out, understanding those concepts, and even you saying, it's not about making you the best front desk, it's making you so good at life. We want to be a part of that journey, almost kind of that 4-year, the athlete comes into the program, you're trying to prepare them for something bigger, but a lot of times they come back to the program. And that was the sense as you were saying that was the reaction I was getting. It's like, he's like Coach K, yeah, right? We're not going to call you Landon anymore. I'm just going to call you Coach L.
There you go.
In terms of your SOPs and really teaching that,
Right.
are those things that, for those that are listening to give them value, are those written out clearly in those SOPs, or do you take each incoming batch of new hires and kind of feel it out?
So both, right? So I think that our HQ team is pretty strong, and we've all been together for 4 or 5 years, which is great. And so what we've done is we have our standard SOPs, but at the same time, we know that time changes, and sometimes even more rapidly than we can keep up with and document and put on paper. And so luckily, we're all super focused and super on the same page. And so we will get in and we'll start training, and then we'll be like, hey, well, this needs to be adapted and this needs to change. And then we'll go and talk to someone else on the leadership team that'll make that adjustment as well. And so one of the nice things is like every one of our personal trainers, they're all trained by the exact same person, the exact same way every single time. Our managers are done the same way. Our assistant managers are done the same way. And sometimes you get kind of in a hiring bind where you're like, hey, I got to hire someone right now and I got to get them started sooner than later. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the hiring environment, the employment environment we're in right now. And so that sometimes takes a little bit of the training takes a little bit of a backseat, if you will. But eventually, like this coming Friday, we have every one of our assistant managers coming into mandatory assistant manager training where they go through all of that stuff. The written out part, I think that's probably our weakest point as our business is having everything written out, because we know that things change and we want to be able to change with them. And so, no, they're not 100% written out. They should be, but they're not.
I think you'll be in good company with that. And when you look at the things that have built a successful company, built your company, you've been with PHYSIQ for 15 years, yep. Almost more than that, something like that, right? Based on good old LinkedIn.
Yeah, founded in 2007.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Looking at kind of the landscape of the industry, there has been a saying, and I don't know if it's applicable still, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm right. Curious, looking at things that you've posted, the development of your brand, there's always innovation that's happening, and there could be a trap of just stick with what got you there. How do you look at innovation while honoring what got you to where it's at? Because obviously 15 years, there's a lot of changes technologically, culturally. So how do you adapt to that, staying true to what your legacy is, but also staying on the front end of innovation?
Yeah, that's a good question. But my philosophy has always been, good is great, but it's not good when greater is possible, right? And so for me,
can you
like,
say that again? I think that's great.
Yeah,
say that one more time.
Good is great, but it's not good when greater is possible. And so for me, like, it's always about like, how do we become better? And you could say, good is good, but it's not good when better is possible. However you want to say it. But for me, it's like, why not always strive to be better? If we're not moving forward, we're moving backward. There is no standing still in life. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. It doesn't really apply if you understand really just general physics. Like, there is either moving forward or backward. There is no standing still. And so for me, it has to be about innovation. It has to be about changing, because people are changing. People are different. Our landscape's changing. The world's changing. Politics are changing. Everything's changing. And if we're not changing with those things, then we're just going to move backward and we're going to fail. And so we stay true to the things that we believe in, which is we want people to feel good. We want our employees to feel good. We want to make sure that people come into the gym and we have top-notch equipment and a top-notch design. And those things are great, but we don't have to say like, hey, this is our exact color scheme. It's not applicable anymore, right? And so that for us is what's okay to change. What's not okay to change is our number one core value, which is really our only core value. It's integrity. Right? And if we have integrity in all that we do, that means that we're willing to change our brand to make sure that we're fitting today's consumer and today's employees.
And what are those triggers for you to say, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get together and huddle. We have to change some things. When you look at the operations of your company over different communities, because sometimes there's different contexts for each community, people react differently. What are triggers that you look at that you can share that say, I need to make a change in that? Because to be as flexible to say, well, maybe it's not the colors, that goes against any kind of branding strategy that you would want to put down.
Right.
But there's also a flexibility to that. So I'm really interested to hear, well, what triggers Landon, Coach L, to look at, okay, we really need to start planning some type of innovation or change because this way is not working because X, Y, Z is happening in these locations.
I think one of my favorite parts about my job in particular is the fact that I get to travel all over the country. And when I do so, I travel and I go see gyms from everywhere. My wife hates it because date night ends up turning into touring the local gym that we're near, But I think one of the things that we look at are what are people doing in their current gyms? Other things are following people on social media, not necessarily social media influence, but what are the people in our communities doing on social media? Where are they posting selfies? What are they doing? And we can take inspiration from hotels, from bars, from, any sort of event space. And we can say, what is driving people to say, I want to be here and I want to take my picture, right? And then we can also look at like what's applicable with the science behind some of the exercises that are being put out, or what are some of the things that can drive engagement or drive someone to say, I want to work out here versus work out at home. So I think all those things is really just being aware of your surroundings. In the fitness industry, we get caught up on being business first and fitness second. But being the fact that I started this business literally out of the trunk of my car as a personal trainer that went knocking doors, I understand that it has to be fitness first and business second. And banks probably don't want to hear that, and landlords probably don't want to hear that, but at the end of the day, that's what our consumer wants. And so everything from our layouts of our facilities to the colors we choose to the lighting, everything has to be what does the consumer want, and where can we take that inspiration from? So to answer your question, I think that's really what it is that drives that change, is just being aware of what's happening in the world around us and what's going to drive people to our facilities. Because we can't be successful if people aren't wanting to come to our facilities. Only 22% of the population actually is physically active and belongs to a gym. Well, then how can we get the other 78% to want to come if it's not just for purely fitness? Can we do other things that may bring them in?
And what's interesting of what you said, there are two things that I picked up in that statement. The first one is attention, and then the second one is outcomes, where core tenets of what you're looking to do is where's the attention at? Shout out to Gary V, day trading attention. But the other thing is outcomes. I actually think the banks do want to hear that, because you're so focused on the outcome that the outcome itself is going to create momentum for others to want to experience that outcome. And what is your opinion on how the message is being shared through our communities about what gyms can do? Because there is an overwhelming amount of messaging that is transactional about the deal, about
Right.
the special, which has its place, without a doubt. I understand that, and we're trying to get recurring revenue, all that good stuff. But a lot of the spirit of what you're talking about is from onboarding staff to even memorizing the name. Love that. Whoever's watching this, you must implement that interview process today. Like, give Landon the credit on that, on your new hire process. That's phenomenal. But the messaging that the gyms put out, what's your take? Because you travel, you have context. You and I have both had the blessing to be able to see a lot of clubs throughout the country. What is your sentiment on the messaging of gyms as a macro, as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's getting a lot better. I think in the past it was definitely just geared towards, hey, um, you want to come in, it's all about looking fit, it's all about being fit, it's about how you look in the mirror type of thing. That's actually what caused me to start my own company. Was the company I looked at before had some really bad comments to the people that they were trying to sell. Was like, hey, look at yourself, you can't afford not to join type of comments. And I'm like, that's really not what it's about. It's about how we make people feel. And some of the biggest competitions, some of the biggest names in the fitness industry have actually gone the exact opposite way. And they said, hey, we don't actually care how you look. We want you to come in and just exercise. And I think it's more about finding a common ground between the two, that it's about the messaging that's, hey, whether you're here to be the most fit you can be, or you're here just to work out and walk on a treadmill one day a month, you're welcome in our facility, because we're about making you healthier physically, mentally, and socially, right? And so the industry as a whole is still really focused on how we get people more physically fit. And post-COVID, we actually, as an industry, have done much better. But I think the issue is, and we saw that in during COVID, is we still have the stigma of being this, dirty, unclean. It's all about buff people looking in the mirror, flexing, and that's just not who we are, right? We're about making people physically, mentally, and socially. I know I keep hammering that in, but there's so much of an aspect of, hey, when you see your friend at the gym, there's that, I actually want to go to the gym and see my friend, and I'm going to work out there because of that. And now I'm working out as part of the fact that I went there to get more socially fit, if you will. And so there ends up being this, transitional property, if you will. I don't really know how to articulate it, where you went in for one reason and you got something else out of it, right? And so I think that our messaging as an industry really needs to focus more on how we can make people feel better about themselves, whatever their goal may be as they come into our fitness facilities.
And that's a conscious decision as a leadership team,
Very
because
much
that's
so.
going to permeate through your interactions on social, how you talk customer service, your
Right.
interactions on the floor. What will your suggestions be for a group that is listening, that heard you speak at URSA, of how to get an organization, maybe as large as yours, if not larger, to start shifting away from maybe these transactional, from the meathead, for lack of a better description, but more
Right.
to the social aspect, to mental health, to real community? What are some things that you'd say you drop into an organization and they're very transactional, they're very offer and deal related? What would you coach the leadership of that organization to do to reach those types of kind of that type of philosophy that you just shared?
Yeah, I think first it starts with your team, right? Is you gotta make sure that you're hiring the right team, and that you're onboarding that team correctly, and that you're making them feel as good as you're hoping your members are going to feel. I think that's first and foremost, the most
That's a
important.
great point.
Right.
That goes.
And it's something we're all working on, right? Like this new
Fantastic
generation
point,
of
though.
hires, this new generation of hires, it's different, right? And that's okay, but it's a learning curve. And so what's one of the things that in our business, I'm not going to say we've mastered. We definitely haven't. But we've done some employee surveys, and we've come out and said, okay, well, we have to implement this, 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 and this. And here's what we have to do as a business to shift that. It's not going to be an overnight thing, but it's going to be maybe a 6 to 12 month process, where it will then allow us to reach the employment goals that we have, and the staffing goals, which then in turn will help us reach the membership goals that we have.
Can you
right?
share one of those? What's a
Yeah.
change that you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different? This is something we need to implement over 6 to 12 for this time in the world.
Well, I think we can see that just in, not even in our industry, but just in employment across the country, that there's a difference between minimum wage and competitive wage, right? And so, typically in our industry, a front desk person may be making, minimum wage to slightly over minimum wage to check people in, but they're not going to be happy with that when they can go to a fast food restaurant, flip hamburgers, and make $3 an hour more, right? So I think one of them is us having to understand what we have to do from an operations standpoint to ensure that our staff is getting the pay that they deserve, while also giving them opportunities to progress, and more than just, hey, you showed up to work and you did your job for 60 days, so now you're going to get some more pay. It's, how can we get them to experience the things we want our members to experience, and include that into part of our pay progressions, right? So could we say, hey, your standard pay is going to be, $1, $2 a more over minimum wage, and it could be anything, right? Like in Oregon, our minimum wage is $13.50 or something, and Texas it may be $8.25. I don't know exactly, but whatever your competitive pay in the area is going to dictate how much more over that minimum wage you pay. But then it's like, hey, at 30 days you're going to get this if you do a minimum of this and you've taken one of our fitness classes, let's say. And then at 60 days you're going to get another wage if you've done these minimums, and maybe you've memorized our smoothie bar and you've taken 3 classes, right? And so it's some of the things that, like, how does our pay progressions also help our member experience? So if our staff understands, as an example, they understand what our smoothie bar is, they have it memorized, that's going to speed up the transaction time of a customer at the smoothie bar. And that's going to mean that there's less wait time, and they're making the smoothies more accurately, and therefore a better experience for everybody, right? And so I think that as an industry, we need to look at how we can not participation trophy raise increases, but how we can make them so that our employees and both our customers come out feeling unique, important, and useful. And that's something we use in our industry. Unique, or in our business here, is unique, important, and useful. It's less about like, hey, come in and show up, and more about, I want you to know, as our staff member, you are important to the success of this organization, and I'm going to reward you as such.
And it sounds like you've really taken time to think about how do you facilitate where the attention of the employee lies, and you're going to use the different mechanisms to encourage that. Compensation attached to certain activities that benefit the customer experience. Right. Oh, you do X amount of classes, you memorize this menu, you understand this script. Cool. Show proficiency within that, show mastery. Maybe there's different levels. I think that's a fantastic tip for individuals to implement. And in terms of how well she would coach or consult with a group that needs to make some changes, that's done it so long, getting input from the employees, as you mentioned, and thank you for going on that tangent with me. What are the other things that you would say to a group? Hey, this is how we need to start adjusting. Don't be stuck in your ways, but
Right.
how else would you do that?
I think it then goes to the messaging of the consumer and just holding everyone accountable from the club members to the club staff and even yourself. So, I mentioned that my coaching philosophy is first fundamentals, then foundation, then process, but I didn't mention the fourth, and the fourth is accountability, because without accountability, there's nothing, right? And for our accountability that we focus on here, it really is, I call it multi-directional, really, or full circle accountability, where I know that if I go into the club and I'm not smiling, or I'm working on my cell phone, emailing a vendor or what partner or whatever it may be, and I'm not focused on the customer, if my staff can't call me out, how can I ever call them out on something they're not doing? And so we have what's called direct, honest, immediate feedback, right? And that goes from us to our staff to us, but also to our consumers. So if we have a rule that, you have to wear shoes in the gym, if we're intimidated and don't want to go up and tell that person that, hey, you need to put your shoes on, then someone else is going to see us not talk to that person. And it's going to make them feel as if it's okay that they can then not wear shoes. Before you know it, there's 30 people in the club not wearing shoes. And when we put a rule in place, hey, you have to wear shoes, now everyone's upset. Right. So I think it just comes down to the accountability of it. If we have someone that's in the club, they're making someone else not feel comfortable. They're spending all their time on a piece of equipment, and you've got, 80-year-old Jane waiting to get on. How can we go up and say, hey, John, Jane is a member of our club. We want her to feel comfortable. I want to introduce you guys. Is there a way she can jump in with you? And maybe it's us just we're noticing our members. We become friends with all of them so that we're comfortable going up and holding them to that level of accountability. And now by that, creating that introduction member to member, they also are saying, hey, I feel welcome here because you're not the big scary bodybuilder that I thought you were. You actually just didn't even realize I was standing here waiting for the piece of equipment. So for me, it comes down to the accountability and full circle accountability.
And that takes a lot of training. Do you find that it's a lot of training, or are you finding individuals through your interview process that have this intuitive sense of paying attention? We're trying to get attention from the consumer, but we also have to pay attention, body language, the tone of their voice, all of those things. And the way that you have these systems set up, you see someone without their shoes that aren't going against the rules, and what are the processes for staff members to come together. It really sounds like there's this environment that you've created at PHYSIQ where it's really about, I'll go back to, it's about attention, getting attention, paying attention, and the outcomes as it relates to that attention. Where did that philosophy come from? You mentioned you started training out of the trunk of your car. You were looking at the messages of other gyms that was almost condescending to work out. What is the catalyst for this philosophy that you've shared? Because these are great nuggets.
Yeah. For me, I think to answer your first question is there a lot of training behind it? I would say no, there's a lot of accountability behind it. Right. And so, training has to be this ongoing thing, just like a football team, right? You have to constantly practice the fundamentals, or eventually that foundation is going to crumble, right? It only becomes a foundation because you consistently practice it. No pro football team doesn't practice tackles. They still practice tackles, right? Maybe not to the extent of an 8-year-old's football team, but they still practice it. And I think that that's the same thing is the training's there, but it shouldn't have to be there all the time. It comes back to then holding them accountable to the level and the standard that we set. And then it's the interview process is less about, hey, show me your resume and show me what you've accomplished in your life, and more about personality. Or do you have the personality that we need to, provide the environment that we want? Can you take me on a tour right now? You know nothing about the gym, but I don't care if you can tell me that that's a prone leg curl that turns into a standing leg curl. I don't care if you can tell me that that's a hack squat. What I care about is, how did you make me feel on the tour? Were you looking at me? Were you walking backwards rather than walking forward so the attention was on me? Were you asking questions about me, right? And so it's, how do you make them feel? Can they get up and give an announcement over the intercom without feeling super shy and super intimidated? Because if they're shy and intimidated to do that, how are they ever going to go stop a member that has bad billing and still continues to come in, right? And so during the interview process, it's all about personality. And then from that point, it's accountability. And then from there, to answer your question, is for me, I learned, people come to me and they say, how did you get to where you are as a CEO with, 120 employees and 5 locations? And I look at it to me and I say, it was hard knock life. Like legitimately, I had $10 left in my name. My wife and I went and bought a pair of resistance bands. We moved in with her mom and dad, and I just knocked doors until I built the company to a point where I could finally afford to rent space out of another gym. And so for me, I knew that like what it took was building relationships with people. That's what was going to keep people with me. I could only control what they did when they were in the gym. And for most people, if I write the most perfect program there is as a personal trainer, the best program, the best nutrition plan, all I can control is what they're doing when they're with me. That's it, right? So if that's all I can control, then my control should be less focused towards the perfect program and more focused towards how they felt, because how they feel will last a lifetime. What they did in the club isn't going to matter. It's all about how they feel.
And what was that key moment? Because talking to a lot of people, and like you have over the years, sometimes we can go back to moments where someone can become very optimistic and hopeful, still difficult times, or they can become very cynical and closed off, regardless of what industry they're at. And with the $10 in your pocket, your wife, you go get some resistance bands. What or who kept you optimistic? What mechanisms were there, or people that said, we still believe in you?
Right.
Obviously your wife. But who or what else was it that kept you going when you were at that point?
Right. I think for me, first, just it's faith in God, right? Like for me, I knew there was something else out there for me than just constantly struggling my whole life. But faith in God also means you have faith in yourself. So for me, it's always faith over fear. Fear consumes us, and when it consumes us, it makes it so that greatness that is possible is not achieved. And so I'm always about, look, I got to push the boundaries. I got to do so. And if I do so with faith, I can accomplish anything, right? The roughest storms create the greatest sea captains. It doesn't matter how rough life is. If you focus on it and you get through it, you will become great as a result. And by no means am I saying I'm great, because I'm so far, far from that. But my goal in life is always just to become better. It's not that I'm not content, but I'm not complacent. Right. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I've done some good things, but I want to do better things. I want to help more people. And so for me, it was always about how do I help people? And the way it is selfishly, right? Like, you go out and do service for someone, you help someone move, or you go, rake the leaves of the elderly couple next door. You're doing service for them, but selfishly, it makes you feel really good. Right. And so what I found is as I was helping people and as I helped them feel good, it actually made me feel really good. And so that's really what just continued to drive this whole mindset. And I realized that even as people would potentially not get results, because they were like, hey, I love working out with you, but I just don't like eating good. I still want to go get fast food every day, whatever it may be. Right. That it was like, well, why do you want to keep working out with me? Well, because I actually enjoy our time together. I'm going, okay, but that's not what we're about. We're about actually making a change. And the more that they enjoyed spending time together, the more they eventually got bought into like, okay, like maybe I will go ahead and eat breakfast today, right? The baby steps. Okay, well now maybe I'll eat a healthy breakfast today. And so it was feeling good that then eventually built the relationship, that eventually built trust that allowed them to get the results that they always wanted. And that's really what started this whole thing, was seeing this change in people and that smile on their face as you literally change their lives.
And in terms of mentors, were you one that was just self-motivated? Because I completely agree. My faith in the Lord is something that has been developed. I've lived you could say a debaucherous life at times early in my fitness industry. And then you start to get humbled a lot. Right. You start to really get punched in the face by life. And then you realize, wow, it's really in serving of others and giving that really makes a difference. And I'm curious, who else came beside you? Shout out to your wife who stood by your side. Were there other mentors that you sought out or that you came across?
Yeah, give a big shout out to my dad, my mom and dad. My dad, man, he just worked hard his whole life, my whole life. I was able to go and do construction with him when I was 12 years old and just see the kind of work he did. We went through a phase in our life where, he was super successful and then lost everything. And I watched him. I grew up in Utah, and the summers are hot, 104, 110 degrees. The winters are cold, -4, -10 degrees. And I watched him for a year ride his bike to work, regardless of how hot or how cold it was, just to ensure that like my family never had to suffer. And so big shout out to him on, I wouldn't say so much of a mentor per se, as much as like just watching him grind his whole life to get to where he was such a motivator to me to know, like, look, it doesn't matter how hard life gets. If we just continue to just push and we endure and we have faith, we will get through it. Right. And so I think that's number one, the motivator there. Two, obviously, you said, was my wife and the support of her. Her mom and dad were obviously big supporters and believers in me and what we could accomplish as they let us move into their home. But other than that, I think a lot of it was just knowing that I wanted more. I had a coach back in high school that told me, hey, you're never gonna be able to run track in college. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, that's all I want. All I want is to run track in college at that time in my life. And he's like, you're just not good enough. You're just not fast enough. And I was like, watch me. And that's what got me started in fitness, was like, I know that if I'm not physically talented, I mean, I'm 5'7", 150 pounds when I'm wet, right? Like I'm not the ideal college athlete by any means, that I knew that I had to find some other way to become better. And when I found fitness and I found out that it did make me better, and I was able to go walk on to a Division I college track team and eventually be able to become a full ride scholarship athlete, that anything's possible if you put our mind to it, and that fitness can help really change our lives. And so I've used that motivation of people telling me, hey, this isn't possible. When I had $10 my name and I said, hey, I'm going to start a health club, and everyone said, no, you're not, you can't do it. That was motivation. Right. And I think we're surrounded by naysayers in our life. We're surrounded by people that, if we're lucky, we're surrounded by people that believe in us, truly, truly believe in us. But for the most part in this world, we're not surrounded by that. And so we can either choose to let that consume us and let us take us down, or we can choose to let that build us and rise above it. And I'm a big believer that we're a product of, one, the people we hang around, and two, the media we consume. And so if we're constantly taking in, we're reading good books, we're listening to good podcasts like yours, we're doing things like that, where we're surrounded by good media and we're surrounded by good people, all we can do is become successful.
And how about that individual? First, thank you for that. That's very kind and humbling of you.
Yeah.
How about that individual that is at that moment where there is a naysayer and they can go either way?
Right.
What do you tell that young man, that young woman, that older man, that older woman, where they're at that moment? No, you cannot. That's what the world is telling them right now. What do you say to them?
It depends. Do I know the person or do not know? Don't know the person. If I know the person, I let them know, like, you may not have faith in yourself right now, but I have faith in you, and you can lean on my faith. If you don't have your own, lean on mine until you have your own. Right. And I think that that's a big thing, that if we can show someone that we believe in them, if no one else does, if we believe in them and they can lean on your faith, just that is a big deal. And then how can we constantly fill them with positivity? Positive thoughts become words, and words become actions, but negative does exactly the same. So how can we help fill them with positive thoughts and positive words, so that they can benefit from that outcome when it happens? If it's someone that I don't know, I just say, hey, just keep grinding. You got to keep striving and keep believing in yourself. And as hard as it gets, there's always someone out there that has it harder. And if they can rise above, so can you. And you can see that there's people all over the country, all over the world that have built something from nothing, right? Or that have come from being, homeless to having a house, or, like yourself, overcoming, medical issues to becoming, healthy again. Like there are so much worse things than maybe not being successful. And sometimes it's not the best to say, hey, like, this person has it harder than you. But I think when you realize that, man, it could be worse, it really does help. And if you don't mind, I'll go off on a quick tangent. I had a medical condition out of high school that really debilitated me. And I was with, it was probably my second or third year of college. I had to end up quitting the track team for a while, just because I was really struggling. And my wife and I, we were dating at the time. We went into this restaurant and I was just feeling so sorry for myself. Like, my track career is over. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't exercise anymore. Like, my life was falling apart as I knew it. And as I'm sitting there and I'm saying these things out loud to her, just pure pity party, right? And as I'm saying that, I look up and the door opens and in rolls this quadriplegic on it in his wheelchair, and he's literally moving it by blowing into a straw. And I look at myself at that moment and I said, it still just makes me so emotional even thinking about that moment in my life where I was like, man, how dare I feel this way about myself, right? Like I need to rise above this because this guy is struggling and has a smile on his face. There is nothing in this world that I can't, one, overcome, and two, that no reason I shouldn't have a smile on my face while I'm doing it. So I try and live by that.
That's powerful. I think about someone like Nick Vujicic, who born no arms, no legs, and the people that he inspires. And there's countless others, like that individual that you saw, maybe doesn't even know how he changed your life, right? When I was going through being sick myself, years later, I'd have people come up and say, "Hey, just watching how you handled yourself." Like, wow, we never know when we're going to inspire others or others are going to inspire us. And I really like what you said about whether you know them or not. And what's interesting about your approach is just even chatting with you right now, when you don't know them and you talk to them like you just did, you'll probably end up knowing them. And then that becomes a relationship. And then the community starts to grow. Right. And I'm really interested in when you look at, and you touched on it, when you look at your career, how you started, $10, and then that moment, it's a very important moment, and I want to honor that. When you have that, what did you start doing with it? Because sometimes, I love this quote, that character is the ability to see through a good resolution long after the emotion that prompted that resolution has disappeared. So you're in this moment, and you get perspective. You get this gift of perspective. If you can take me back, what happened from there? How did you harness that emotion? And even when that emotion dissipated, what did you do to keep moving forward to get you where you're at today?
Yeah, I can honestly, and power of vulnerability moment right here, right? Like I remember like legitimately breaking down into tears with my wife or girlfriend she was my girlfriend at the time, and just being like, how dare I feel this way? And kind of vowing at that moment that regardless of what I went through, that I was going to be able to find positivity in it. And so I become a big advocate that, later in life, you always look back at a moment and say, I learned so much from this. And everyone will do that. It doesn't matter what you go through in your life. You will look back at some point and you will say, I learned this from that. But where the power comes from is when you can learn it in the moment. And you can understand in the moment and not wait until, 10 years down the road, right? So, that moment in life when we had the last bit of money to our name, I could have looked back, 10, 15 years from now, and I could say, man, I learned so much about, grinding and learning about, humility and learning about sales and knocking doors. Or in that moment, I could say, you know what, this is rough, but I'm going to learn how to sell. I'm going to learn how to live off of nothing. I'm going to learn how to do this, this, and this. And as we do that, that's where true power comes from. So what I've always done from that moment is found that regardless of what we go through, we can find positivity. And I won't say it always works, right? There are times where we're just, man, you just want to feel bad for yourself or times are hard. But then you just remember, look, I got to stay positive. I got to have faith in myself. I got to have faith in my family and my process and God. And as we do those things, man, that lifts you up. And so if you can just remember to smile, if nothing else, look in the mirror and say, I got this, and smile, you'll get through it.
100%.
So that's really how I continue to do it.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And for fun, what did you do in track? What was your disciplines?
400 meter mostly. Yeah.
Could you beat a lot of your people on staff? I'd like to see a physique.
I could probably beat like back in the day, yes, but now I'm old.
Little fundraiser. I'm just saying, Coach L goes on the track, put little dollars on who's going to win. Might be a good way, give back to the community. No, that's awesome. Now, in terms of physique, and I just love how this has been framed in terms of the approach and how you look at how do you service your community, how you service people, how do you make it not cliche, then relationship, and then where it was rooted in your story. When you look at the future of physique, within the context that I think is super important, that You're trying to build people up, not for the sake of physique. It's just a part of their stop. Hopefully they stay longer. You're not trying to have them be the best front desk person in the training. You're trying to have them be the best person to prepare them for life. And hopefully they choose to stay at physique and rise the ranks. With that approach, where do you think your company is going to go? What is your ambition with physique? Does it go outside of the Pacific Northwest? What's the goal?
Yeah, I can't get too specific on where we want to go, but I do know that we are looking at other areas. We're in a unique spot in our business where we're not small and we're not big. I call us medium, right?
A lot of people that listen to this are wearing those types of shirts.
Yeah,
by the way,
that's me right now.
Buddy, that wasn't for you. But hey, it's all good.
But I look at it and I say, hey. We either need to say we're done growing and just understand that we'll have staff attrition as part of people moving on to their next life, or we have to grow and provide opportunities for our staff to have growth within our company as well. And so the more we grow, the more opportunities become available for our staff. And so I look at it and say, yes, we're preparing our team for to be better anywhere, right? If we can teach them to work hard here, then hopefully they'll work hard at their next career and so on and so forth. But man, wouldn't it be great if we could teach them to work hard here and then they just stay with us, and it just simplifies the process overall. So that's really my goal, is to grow to a point where we can have growth within our company more than what it is now. And we can provide jobs to those that serve with us right now. Right. And whether it be our friends or our family members or those that are part of our team, I want to be able to provide growth opportunities for them.
And when is it that you'll know it's enough?
I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever be enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like I mentioned before, is I'm not someone that's not grateful for what I have. I'm not someone that, says, just focuses on the gap, if you will. If you ever read the book Gap and Gain, The Gap and the Gain, like I'm not someone just focuses on the gap, but I look at it and I say, I'm happy with where we're at, but I know so much more is possible. And I look at some of these, some of the great people in our industry. You look at, the Vassas, the EOSs, Edge Family Fitness, Texas Family Fitness, all these great companies, Gold's Gym, Move Fitness, all these guys that they've expanded and they've created such a wonderful brand. I look at it and go, I know it's possible if I just keep pushing and keep grinding and keep my focus where it needs to be. And if I can do that, then I can provide good living wages and good job opportunities and a great environment for our team members.
Oh, that's amazing. And what I love about it is you're doing it with friends and family.
Right.
And I'm sure it's not always easy, especially when there's that love, right? There's that love between you all.
It's harder more often than it's easy. I will tell you that.
But is it? Would you say it's more rewarding? I don't know if you've been in other situations with non.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. I get to show up. I get to see my dad every day, right? My dad and I, we work together every single day. He runs his construction background. He runs our facilities and maintenance and helps oversee all our new construction. My buddy Brandon, he's one of my best friends. He gave me my first job as a personal trainer, and now he's our VP of fitness. Right, I get to see him every single day, and so not many people get to hang out with the people that they love all the time. Right, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else, and I'm blessed enough that I get to spend that time at work with the people that I want to be around, anyways. So yeah, it's great. Now, it's hard when you also wear multiple hats, right? So like when you wear the hat of co-owner and VP of fitness and best friend, you don't always want to spend time with each other outside of work, right? So it makes that's the hard part. But yeah, man, it's rewarding. I look at it and say, hey, you either start a business for one, to sell, or two, to pass it on to your family. So, I look at, I got 4 babies. I got an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And man, we did our grand opening of our new location last Monday, and they were working the front desk. And I look at it, I said, this is what it's all about, man. Like, if I can get friends and family involved, Brandon had his 2 kids running the front desk. Like, why else do we do this, right? It was a fantastic moment where they were getting to see people getting ready to come in and change their lives, and it was fantastic.
And if you and Dad don't agree, does he still get to put you on timeout?
I get punished outside of work, but I'm the boss at work.
That's awesome. I'd love to just keep talking to you. I just think the spirit of how you do things, knowing you more in this moment. I don't want to sound cheesy, but I really respect the way that you look at things. I really respect the way that you operate. I've been doing this for a long time, and just super impressed, and really, really think you're going to be super successful beyond that than what you already are.
Thank you.
But yeah, but we got to do like Coach L's quick takes, and
go. Let's do it.
Just like, hey,
part 2,
Landon, you got 5 minutes? Let's do a quick take. This would be
let's do it, man.
This would be awesome. But
I always got 5 minutes. I enjoy this more than anything. Like when you mentioned earlier, I spoke at Ursa, like that kind of stuff, training the team, coaching, speaking of these type of things. This is my joy, man. I tell my wife, if I could get paid to coach 8th grade flag football and teach people how to, start relationships not relationships, but have,
I get it.
Help people feel good in a gym.
Yep.
That's all I do for a living.